Welcome to Reading the Bible Together, and today we're reading Genesis chapter 28. But to do so, we need to go back to the first few chapters of Genesis chapter 27, which introduce the events which take place. Now, you may remember that following the deception of Isaac, Rebekah comes up with a cover story for Jacob's hasty departure. He's off to find a wife. She says to Isaac, "I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living." Now, Rebekah is speaking from experience here. Her eldest son Esau had married some local Hittite girls, and we read at the end of chapter 26, they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. I'm not sure what it was about Hittite wives, but even Abraham made sure that Isaac would not marry one of them. In chapter 24, in the strongest possible language, Abraham commands his servant, "Put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I'm living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac." So it's a family tradition of sorts. Rebekah is reminding Isaac that he should once again follow in Abraham's footsteps, the one thing Isaac is good at, it seems, and make sure Jacob gets a wife from back home. Not only back home, but from back house to the very tribe and family from which Rebekah had come. This is not without danger. Rebekah has demonstrated a capacity for scheming, cunning, deception, and complaint, attributes which she passed on to Jacob. And sending Jacob back to Rebekah's brother Laban is going to give Jacob a hard lesson in what a true master of scheming, cunning, deception, and complaint can manage to pull off. But that's the next chapter. Back to this one. Somehow Jacob is still hanging around, doubtless in hiding from the vengeful Esau, who we were told earlier is consoling himself with the thought of killing you. Well, I hope no one's consoling themselves with the thought of killing me. What a statement. We're told, though, that in respect of his father, Esau won't kill Jacob until after Isaac dies, which is nice. So maybe Esau is actually present when Isaac calls Jacob to his side to instruct him to leave and to reiterate the covenant once again. Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Padan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there, from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham. Now, overhearing this, a realization came to Esau, to whom realizations were most often slow to come, if at all. It says, Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. So he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth and the daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. Now, while this may have been pleasing news to Isaac and Rebekah, what's interesting to me today is how Ishmael is still very much a part of the story. Having been reconciled to Isaac at the time of Abraham's death, his tribe apparently remains in the area, or at least, very least in contact for Esau to get a wife from there. The stories of Isaac and Ishmael, the brothers who are often thought to be utterly estranged, are further bonded together through marriage. We need to remember these stories when we're thinking about the situation in the Middle East and thinking as though that's insoluble. People can come together again. The enmity between Arabs and Jews is not rooted in their foundational stories. Reconciliation is. Now, on to the more famous part of this passage. En route to Haran, north of the Promised Land, Jacob, who's apparently traveling alone, stops for the night in a certain place. A certain place. The phrase certain place is repeated several times throughout this story. It isn't just any place, it's a certain place. And bereft of the comforts of home, he takes a stone for a pillow and settles in to sleep. But what a sleep it is! He dreams of a stairway, literally a stone ladder, which reaches from the earth to the heavens, and angels or messengers of God are ascending and descending, and above it all stands the Lord. Now, if you're thinking about the Tower of Babel, you aren't far off. This is precisely the description of a ziggurat, a pyramidal structure with stepped stones going up the side like a vast stairway reaching to the top. A top the builders of the Tower of Babel hoped would reach into heaven itself. In Jacob's dream, it does. And from the heavens, the Lord speaks. I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out from the west to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. And so it is that Jacob, for the first time, through a dream in a certain place, hears the voice of God and is assured that the covenant will pass through him despite his scheming. Further, he receives an additional assurance. God says, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. Now, reading between the lines here, we get the idea that Jacob is indeed leaving the promised land. Remember, he's on the run and he's going to Haran, at least, if not further, to find a wife. And it'll be some time before he returns. And we will find out just how long in chapters to come. But God will bring him back. Now, remember that when Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for Isaac, he explicitly instructed that Isaac was not to leave the promised land. Well, Jacob, as a result of his scheming, has to leave, but God will bring him back. Now, faithful Jews regard this promise given to Jacob as the permanent promise of God. When in exile, God will bring his people back to the promised land. They were exiled in Egypt. Under Moses, God brought them back. They were exiled in Babylon. Under Ezra and Nehemiah, God brought them back. They were exiled by the Greeks. Under the Maccabees, God brought them back. They were exiled by the Romans, a long, long exile. And finally, in 1948, under the United Nations, God brought them back. So Jacob, waking from his dream, says, God was in this place and I did not know. This is none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven. And he makes a pillar from his pillow stone, pours oil on it as a sign of blessing, and declares to be the place to be Bethel, which means the house of God. And then, because it's Jacob we're dealing with here, rather than simply obeying God in thanks for the promise of the covenant, confident that God will fulfill his end of the bargain, Jacob makes a deal. If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and will give me clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. If you do this, God, and let's throw in food and clothing as well. If you give me everything, then I will declare that you're my God. And I'll give you a tenth of everything you've given to me. Which isn't a terribly generous deal. And it implies a continued lack of trust on Jacob's part. But what can you expect? It's Jacob we're dealing with here. Maybe it's this response which explains why God does not speak to Jacob again for many, many years, and then only briefly. But that's in chapters to come. In the meantime, there's more deal-making and cheating and swindling ahead. As has been written, this is Jacob after all. What else may we expect from him? His name is connected with deceit and cleverness. Why should he treat God any differently than he treated his brother? With this amazing response to the free gift of God to the undeserving one, we're brought more completely into the world of Jacob, a world in which cleverness is paramount and trickery rules. And so we must not expect from this cycle of stories simple lessons in morality. We must watch as God works the divine will through a motley collection of human beings. And may I add, still does. We'll see you next time for Genesis chapter 29 as we continue reading the Bible together.